is the Toward a New World podcast with your host, Corinna Stoffel. As a space for all things regarding the global, collective transition we are in, we have conversations about transition, separation, and connection regarding oneself, others, and the earth. The aim is to educate, empower, and inspire. Hello and welcome. Today, I would like to talk about rites of passage. They are similar to what I talked about in the very first episode to the transitions. There are 3 phases, and they're titled differently because with rites of passage, there is a reaching back to the first writing about rites of passage by Van Gennep. And he used words like separation, threshold, incorporation for the 3 phases. And if you really look at it, separation, letting go, threshold being the neutral zone, the challenge, and incorporation, the new beginning. So there is definitely the correlation with it. And there are differences. A transition is something that happens. It happens in our life. It can be small transitions. It can be big transitions. And especially the small or smaller ones, we tend to not really acknowledge. They just happen to us. There is the process, and we are not aware even that we have just gone through a transition. As a result of not being aware that we have gone through the transition, we also don't own the change that has happened in us. A rite of passage is an intentional transition. It's a marking of it. And therefore, the separation from our usual environment needs to be there. In a transition, it can just happen because I am continuing my job, but as a sudden I'm working in a different city. So there is that separation, there is that change, but it isn't perceived as a big change because I'm just moving to a different city. The threshold in a rite of passage is usually in nature. So it doesn't have to be, but it usually is. And it being in nature for several days, it often is already including that separation from the usual place of being. And the incorporation is ideally an acknowledgement by elders in the community. And also the community itself acknowledges that having gone through a rite of passage, am different when I am coming back to the community. So, do we have rites of passage nowadays? Sadly, not. It's not a common thing. There are some groups that will support and enable rites of passage. Rites of passage are often still practiced in indigenous cultures throughout the world, but for us modern humans, we have lost that. And As a result, we have lost a lot of the benefits that a rite of passage was bringing to a community. There was not only a renewal in energy through the person going through a rite of passage that that person brought to the community. There was a revitalization because as a sudden, that person got clear on what the gifts are that the person has to the community or for the community that is contributing to the community. When I'm undertaking a rite of passage, I'm not just going out to mark the transition in my life, but there is also the question is, what am I bringing back to my community? So there is a different angle to it. And we do not have elders in our culture today. Elder has nothing to do with age. You cannot say that, oh, I'm retired, therefore I'm an elder. There is actually a calling to be an elder. And indigenous cultures understood the importance of the role of an elder, that they had often initiations into elderhood. An elder has abilities that are unique. They've been through their own initiations. So elders are familiar with that whole initiatory process, with the changes that that initiation brings within the person. An elder is able to hold opposites and get out of judgment. There is no longer the need to be right, to be recognized as somebody important, as those needs are gone. And as a result of those needs being gone, an elder is able to be fully present with what is. And they have the ability to see a bigger picture, not just the straight ahead, often with blinders attached due to the belief systems, due to the conclusions and assumptions that people come to. They can see the bigger picture. And that ability also allows an elder to see who that person that is coming back from a rite of passage is, and maybe even perceive what they stepped into. They have a connection with the earth, but also with the cosmos. That is, in a way, part of holding the opposites. So, where does that leave us, not having elders? We can start, and there are movements. I know one person, for instance, who is in a way a colleague of mine because we met in working with Rites of Passage, who is doing elder quests, the initiation for people who feel called to become an elder. And working that, there are other people that are talking about elderhood and what is required in elderhood, not necessarily offering the initiation into elderhood. And I just recently learned by taking an online course that, for instance, in Africa, tribe would require, if somebody wanted to become an elder, that the person be naked, be covered in ashes, and then be, in a way you could say, humiliated with saying, oh, you were doing this and you were just that. And the elder has to be able, as I said, to not have the need anymore to be right, not have the need to be seen as this, that, or the other, not have the need to be recognized as great, as successful, which is so often the case that we have, even with retired people in our culture. So the contribution that a rite of passage is bringing to a community is that, let's say I'm going through a rite of passage. And when I go out to mark whatever transition I mark in my life, there is also the question of what gifts do I have that I am bringing back to my community? And from that sense, I am becoming a deeper person, a person who has a deeper sense of who she is. We so often go intellectually by describing data points about our lives on defining who we are. But is that who we are? Or are we way more than that? So if I become a deeper person, having a deeper sense of who I am, I can also bring the gifts. And I can be who I am and not who I think I am supposed to be, because I'm in that job, because I'm having that education, because of whatever the conclusions are that I have about myself and who I am. There is more authenticity. There is more congruence between how I stand in the world and who I am as a person. Because ultimately, the way I look at it, I'm an infinite being. I'm coming from spirit, therefore I'm infinite. And what the heck does that mean? And I will have in the future a podcast segment about who are you and that whole process. Going through an initiation doesn't make me better than somebody. It makes me deeper than others, yes. But that deeper has nothing to do with feeling, oh, I'm better, I'm more educated, I'm more successful, I'm richer, that comparison is not part of initiation. Actually, the congruence and the depth take away from the need to compare with others. And that depth of a person is perceived by others, even though they may not be able to name it, but there is something, and I have to say that I've experienced that in my life, that I am attracted to a person who has undergone an initiation, who has undertaken a rite of passage, because of that depth that is there, that you can go underneath. Conversations how often do they stay on the level of what is the weather? Where am I going on vacation? What am I doing this coming weekend? There is a real depth to it. You can have a different type of conversation. And even though I'm saying that, it's hard to describe what that depth is all about. It's an energetic perception of it. So, really, I invite you to look at the fact that we are globally, as humanity, in a rite of passage because the world seems to be falling apart. I mean, we've had the pandemic, we have a financial crisis, we have the climate crisis, we have another crisis here and there. And that is usually a sign that things are disintegrating. And what does the world going through a rite of passage require of me? It almost requires that I am also becoming deeper, different transition, that I am going through a rite of passage. So there is that interplay. And as individuals, if we go through a rite of passage, we're able to see the bigger picture. Seeing the bigger picture allows us to perceive things that might be possible that we normally would not look at. So there is a real, it's as if the world, the earth, the universe, nature, God, whatever you want to call it, is asking us to step up. And I've heard people talk about humanity 2.0. That would require a rite of passage. So I'm leaving you with that. Contemplate it, and I would really appreciate if you leave a comment on what spoke to you, or where you have a question, or where you are totally, no, this can't be. I'd love to hear from you. Put it down in the comments. Thank you. Until next week. Bye-bye.